Sykkuno is in hot water after a Google drop and a coordinated hit piece drops on him regarding his labeling as a predator for his behavior. So we're reading today how the use of the word predator is dangerous legally and potentially defamatory. Of course, I'm Andrew Esquire, American attorney, and this is a legal mindset where we teach you to be your own judge. And this is a fast facts video, the quick and dirty version of the latest in legal news. So our defendant today is Sykkuno, a very large YouTuber, and the plaintiffs, the people making the accusations in this case, are several VTubers and their kind of allies, Himamal, Elfilia, Bao, and Mujin. And all of these folks put together have applied that predator label to Sykkuno, and that's why we're here today to talk about this. So obviously, our Exhibit A is going to be the document, the Google Doc. If you've been around in the VTuber world as long as I have, you know that many times these accusations and problems come in the form of Google documents. And I've long said that Google documents carry so much less than actually going out and filing a police report or filing some sort of lawsuit or legal action. Unless you've got evidence that is substantial enough to bring to court to charge somebody with, there's certain labels and applications that are inappropriate. And I think in this case, using the word predator is one of those things. So to give some background here, Sykkuno is very large. He has 2.6 million subscribers on YouTube, and that's part of what is being used against him. Part of the argument here is, as a large content creator, you somehow have more agency and power than a smaller content creator. Now, for me, this is kind of a ridiculous argument, as once again, that we're all human beings. We all have our own agency and ability, regardless of whether you have 1 subscriber, 0, no YouTube channel at all. You are a person with the ability to make your own decisions. And these individuals, VTubers Himamal and Elfilia, were romanced as effectively side chicks by Sykkuno, as is detailed in that Google Doc, while he was in a relationship. Now, make no mistake, this is scummy behavior, it's dishonest, it's cheating, and all of those labels would be very, very much appropriate. Calling him a playboy, an F-boy, a cheater, all of that stuff would be fair game.
But you really are popular, huh? Wait, it was a compliment. And besides, it just means that even though you're really popular, you still wanted to talk to me, right? So...
But we know in the YouTube world, you have to sensationalize everything. You have to apply extreme labels in order to get clicks and to get people to try to click on your slop content. And that's exactly what happened when these creators coordinated with Bao and Mujin to come up with a narrative to label him as a predator and drop this all at once. And this was seen with Mujin's documentary, which dropped within 1 hour of the Google Doc being published. And as you know, when you've got these long documentaries that are, an hour, 45 minutes, whatever, however long, that are pre-produced, that are edited, clearly those have been worked on for quite a bit of time before they drop. And we can see here in the actual video how he, reading through this, applies that predator label with absolutely no caveat.
Rumors still manage to spread. Many content creators, both big and small, would vent to their friends about his behavior. Behind the scenes for many, he'd be known as a predator who regularly took advantage of smaller and or vulnerable content creators. The reason why Sykkuno would abruptly stop hanging out with certain people throughout the years is because of this predatory behavior. However, he'd managed to keep enough influential friends around him to legitimize his position in the space, especially seeing that many of those friends were women who would have normally stood in solidarity with any sort of victim, making it seem like he was safe enough to trust because they trusted him enough to be a friend. As Elfilia spoke with Sykkuno, she'd tell him about rumors that she had heard from someone else, about how Sykkuno had a roster of readily available women, and how they all coincidentally were smaller content creators who wouldn't dare touch him if something went wrong.
So let's stop there and just examine that. Once again, you see Mujin, without any caveat or anything, reading through this, applying that predatory label. Once again, just kind of reading the Google Doc with absolutely no analysis or brain cells applied, and just saying, yeah, that's totally accurate. That's totally a good application of the word predator, and that's totally fine. Just because, once again, this guy had a roster of women and they happen to be smaller VTubers. Once again, making that argument that because you somehow have less viewers, that makes you less of a human being. So The reason why this is problematic is we live in a post-Depp versus Heard world where we now have to question these Me Too accusations. And make no mistake, this is a VTuber Me Too type accusation, and look at them a little bit harder to say, okay, is there kind of fault applying on both sides? Is there some reason why we should look at this in a different light? And in this case, there definitely is, because if you look at this and look at the reaction to this, you see people pushing back against this narrative, such as this comment by Nicholas Light saying, read the whole document, just move the F on, dangerous predator, go give me a break. And another response here, so by your logic, women who monkey branch and cheat are also dangerous predators. So, some fair criticism there, especially when you look at the evidence that these individuals, these small content creators, were not ones that he went out of the way to approach, but ones that slid into his DMs. So these content creators, these small content creators, were indeed out there hoping to catch the prey, as in the larger content creator that they were searching for. And it's very interesting the juxtaposition they apply here, particularly when they also apply the age gap analysis. So they say, hey, there was this age gap as well, and that was predatory. Well, you can see an age gap working two ways. Many people find an age gap, and whether it's an older man, older woman, whatever, they find an age gap appealing because an older person can have more emotional stability, they can be more consistent, and certainly they have usually more resources to give. They have more finances, they can give out money, and that's something that's viewed positively when you're in good with them. But as soon as the narrative flips and as soon as things go negative, now it's manipulation, now it's a power imbalance, now it's economic domination, right? And mind you, none of these funds, this thousands of dollars that were given to these girls, seem to have been returned or given back to kind of make this all right. This is something that, once again, when it was an advantage, it was an advantage, and when it was not, it was not. And we see here some of the backlash also leading to some spurging out by Mujin, the content creator that co-signed and really pushed a lot of this through his documentary, which got millions of views, pushing back against Powder, VTuber Powder, who said, can you criticize him for cheating? Absolutely. But never once did I feel manipulated by this dude. He's a huge flirt, but I was incredibly aware of the power dynamic. He was just friendly. He's quite forward with his riz, which I didn't like being around, gave me player vibes. Am I going to flip out on him? No. Usually when someone is like that, they're already talking to multiple people. So she was able to see, hey, this guy's a playboy, this guy might be an F-boy, he might be whatever. I don't like it. I'm out of this situation. She continues to say, I see some women trying to play victim as if they didn't have a brain in the situation. Also throwing the word predator around. I think that's unreasonable. Mujin was never really a reliable narrator. If a larger creator who is friendly asked to play a game with you, would you say no? Very good analysis by Powder, very reasonable, and kind of, once again, she applying a balanced side of agency there. So yes, call him a playboy, call him an F-boy, whatever, but say, hey, look, you have brain cells that you can apply to this situation, and you should be applying those. Mujin goes back and says, can you criticize him for cheating? Absolutely. But I had no viewers whatsoever and became desperate after trying everything to be relevant. I choose to appeal to people who hate my gender in order to pay rent. Am I going to flip on a serial cheater who had sex with women without telling them that they'd be homewreckers? Of course not. Morals are an obstacle to my income. Mujin was never a reliable narrator, so when his video eventually comes out about me being canceled by my audience for secretly having dated a black guy, even though I kept saying I can't stand minorities, please don't trust him. Also, English is my first language, and I have no idea that predator can mean a person or organization that uses weaker people for their own advantage. But it's okay. My audience gobbles up anything I say, dumbass simps. Well, I don't think Mujin should be using the word simp. And you can see in that he applies the most favorable definition of predator for him. He goes and says, well, we're just looking at this as weaker people, right? And once again, there's a huge debate on whether or not these people are actually, quote unquote, weaker overall, as a whole, just based on the fact that perhaps they have lower sub count, perhaps there's an age gap, that somehow makes them weaker. Well, it doesn't necessarily make it predatory. And if we look at the core legal definition, and this is what I want to focus on, because when we use this in the context of dating, especially a man dating a woman, it could be a woman dating a man, but when we use this in a dating context, online for an individual, we all know the definition that people are going to assume with predator. And that is actually the legal definition. which is legally a sexual predator is a person who has committed one or more severe sexual offenses and is determined to pose a continuing danger to others. This designation is formalized under statutes as a SVP, sexually violent predator laws, which exist in many U.S. jurisdictions. To qualify as a predator, you have to have a conviction for a sexually violent offense, such as aggravated sexual assault, child abuse, or trafficking minors for be found by a court to have a mental abnormality or a personality disorder that predisposes them to future violent acts, and undergo psychological evaluation and expert testimony to assess the likelihood of recidivism. Obviously, this is the definition that they were hoping to get the clicks, they were hoping to get the engagement, they were hoping to push this definition, not the other tame one. That's playing that down, and that's really undercutting what they meant here. So here's my judgment. In judgment, cheating and dishonesty are bad and can be condemned. It's very right if you want to come out and call someone a cheater or judge their morality. That's perfectly fine. And I don't think anyone would have had any problem with this if that's where it stopped. And once again, I don't really care one way or another about Sykkuno, and calling him a cheater, labeling him as this or that, that's fine. And the real victim in this is his girlfriend, who really knew nothing about this and was exposed to this information at the end. And also at the end, she's having to deal with this fallout, which may or may not have been with her consent. The documentary, all this expose that was put out. She's really the only one here that's kind of the innocent party that everyone should feel bad for. But use of the term predator is potentially defamatory, and it dilutes the criminal meaning. This is similar we see on the internet to the use of the word PDF. I think you guys can see that there, or the use of the word abuser. All of these words should be out of the lexicon, out of the internet lexicon in application to individuals, unless they are going down that criminal track, unless they're going down the path of actual criminality, right? There are real predators out there that can be called out, that are committing sex crimes, that are abusing children, all that sort of stuff, and that is very much justified. But as there's no police report, no lawsuits, there's no business using this criminal language. But I want to know what you guys think about the Sykkuno situation. Let me know in the comments below, and I'll catch you on the next one.